For years, Bishop Noel Jones was known as the man who had everything: fame, power, wisdom, and a voice that could move thousands to tears. But behind the bright lights of the church stage and the polished sermons, there was a secret battle, a loneliness that followed him even after the crowd went home. You won't believe how a man who spoke so beautifully about love waited more than 70 years to find it. Let me tell you, his story wasn't just about a wedding. It was about a lifetime of waiting and what happened when destiny took an unexpected turn. People called him the Bachelor Bishop. They wondered why he never settled down. Some said he was too focused on his ministry. Others whispered about fear. But here is the shocking part. Bishop Jones didn't avoid marriage because he didn't believe in it. He avoided it because he respected it too much. He once said that love demands everything from you, and he wasn't sure he was ready to give everything. That's the part most people never understood. He could build churches, lead thousands, and speak about faith with fire, but love, real love, scared him more than failure ever did. This is how it all began to change. As the years went by, the same man who preached about divine purpose started feeling the emptiness behind his own success. Every time he left the pulpit, the silence in his home grew louder. He started realizing that while he was known by the world, he wasn't known by anyone truly close. He once said, "I spent so much time building for others that I forgot to build for myself." You won't believe how honest those words were for a man who had spent his life teaching others how to live with faith. But here is where it gets interesting. When Bishop Jones met Loretta, she didn't come into his life like a storm. She came quietly with patience. For years, she stood beside him, not demanding attention, not pushing for a title, just being there. And what makes this story different is that she didn't fall in love with Bishop Jones, the preacher. She fell in love with Noel Jones, the man behind the suit, the man who sometimes sat in silence, wondering if he had already missed his chance at love. The craziest part? For 2 decades, they stayed close but never married. The world watched and judged, but they waited, and no one knew why. Then, one day, destiny took an unexpected turn. At 72, Bishop Jones shocked everyone when he finally decided to marry. The announcement hit headlines everywhere. Some cheered, others doubted. But only he knew what this moment really meant. Before the wedding, he asked Loretta to sit with him, just the two of them. What happened next would leave even his closest followers speechless. He told her, "Before we say, 'I do,' there are 5 truths I need you to know." They weren't romantic promises. They were confessions, lessons that came from a lifetime of mistakes, regrets, and redemption. The first truth he told her was about timing. He said, "You can have everything you prayed for, but if you get it before you're ready, it will feel like a curse instead of a blessing." When Loretta heard that, she stayed silent because she knew those words came from a man who had waited too long but also learned too much. Bishop Jones explained that timing isn't about age, it's about readiness. He told her, "If I had married you when I first met you, I would have loved you the way a busy man loves, halfway." That one line carried the pain of all those lonely years. It wasn't that he didn't want love, he just didn't know how to give it without losing himself. But here's the shocking part. The reason he waited so long wasn't because of fear of marriage. It was because he was still at war with his own reflection. He once said that he had spent years trying to be the man everyone expected, but he had forgotten to become the man he truly needed to be. That's why he told Loretta that God didn't delay their love. He protected it. He said, "I wasn't ready to love you when we met. I was still learning to love myself." This is where it gets interesting. The people around him thought his delay was a mistake, but it turned out to be divine direction. Because when Bishop Jones finally stood before his bride, he wasn't a man trying to prove he could love. He was a man ready to keep love. He looked at Loretta and said, "I didn't marry you when the world expected me to." I married you when heaven confirmed I could handle it. When Bishop Noel Jones began to reveal the second truth to his wife, the room went silent. You won't believe what came out of his mouth next. It wasn't about love or romance this time. It was about the price he had paid to stand on the stage that made him famous. He said softly, "Loretta, before you marry me, you need to understand the weight you're marrying." That one line held the kind of truth most people in ministry would never dare to say out loud. He explained that the pulpit gave him power, but it also took away his peace. Every sermon came with pressure. Every smile hid exhaustion. Every handshake felt like a mask he was forced to wear. The world saw Bishop Jones, but very few ever saw Noel, the man behind the title. Let me tell you, this is how life looked behind the curtains. While the world believed he lived in constant glory, he spent countless nights alone, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he had traded his soul for a microphone. He once said, "The anointing will draw people to you, but it won't stay to comfort you." Those weren't just words, they were confessions. What makes this story different is that it showed how even the most powerful man in the church could still feel powerless when the lights went out. But here is the shocking part. Bishop Jones told Loretta that sometimes ministry felt like another woman, always demanding attention, never satisfied, and always pulling him away from the one thing he wanted most, peace. He said, "You're not just marrying the man, you're marrying the mission." That sentence hit deep, because while everyone admired his strength, no one ever asked what it cost him to stay strong. He explained that for years, he carried people's prayers, pain, and problems until he forgot what his own voice sounded like. And in that quiet truth, Loretta began to see what she was really saying yes to. Not just a husband, but a man who had been broken by expectation. This is where it gets interesting. Bishop Jones said that the church world can be beautiful and brutal at the same time. People expect perfection, not honesty. They cheer when you succeed, but they whisper when you struggle. He told Loretta, "People didn't want to see my humanity. They wanted to see holiness in motion." Those words revealed the loneliness of leadership, the kind that eats you slowly from the inside. You won't believe how he survived all those years pretending to be fine when, deep down, he was tired. He said he had learned how to perform faith, even on the days when he barely had any left. And then came the craziest part, the confession that broke Loretta's heart but made her love him even more. He told her, "There were nights I preached to thousands, but went home feeling empty. I gave everyone else hope while I felt hollow." He wasn't proud of it, but he wanted her to know the truth before she walked down that aisle. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was real life, messy, painful, and sacred. He said, "The spotlight looks warm, but it burns if you stand under it too long." That was the price of being Bishop Noel Jones, admired by many, but known by none. But destiny took an unexpected turn when he said the next line, one that no one outside that room ever expected to hear. "The world has seen my gift," he told her, "but I need you to see my grief." That moment changed everything. For the first time, he wasn't preaching. He was confessing. He wasn't speaking as a bishop. He was speaking as a broken man trying to be understood. Loretta's eyes filled with tears because she finally saw the side of him the world never would. What makes this story different is that this wasn't just a love story. It was a redemption story, the kind where truth feels heavier than sin, but more healing than silence. He told her that being in the public eye was like living in a glass house, beautiful from the outside, fragile on the inside. Every mistake echoed louder. Every rumor hurt deeper. He had learned how to protect his image, but in doing so, he had forgotten how to protect his heart. "I need you to know," he whispered, "that marrying me means carrying my silence, my exhaustion, and the weight of who I've become." And Loretta didn't flinch. She didn't run. She just held his hand as if to say, "I see you." That was the moment Bishop Jones realized something he had never felt before: safety. The kind of peace that doesn't come from applause, but from acceptance. He said, "If you can handle my brokenness, you'll also experience my peace." And in that truth, something shifted. The man who once stood above thousands finally stood equal beside one woman who saw him completely. After revealing the weight of the platform, Bishop Noel Jones moved to the third truth, one that pierced deeper than anything he had shared before. You won't believe what he said next. He leaned closer to Loretta and said, "Love isn't about performance, it's about presence." For decades, he had performed faith for everyone else: sermons, interviews, conferences, but behind closed doors, he sometimes struggled just to feel it. He confessed that he had equated busyness with purpose, thinking that if he preached enough, helped enough people, and stayed in demand, the emptiness inside him would disappear. But it didn't. The craziest part was that all the accolades, applause, and respect couldn't fill the quiet nights of longing for real connection. Let me tell you, this is how he explained it to her. Bishop Jones said, "I have spent years giving the world what it wanted to see: strength, wisdom, hope, but I almost forgot how to be vulnerable, how to let someone in." And there it was, the shocking part. He admitted that he had been afraid of showing his flaws because the world expected perfection from him. He explained that when people admired his sermons and intellect, few stopped to think about the cost of maintaining that image. And that's what made his story different. He wasn't just a man who waited to marry. He was a man who had survived decades under the heavy gaze of judgment and expectation. But here is where it gets interesting. He told Loretta, "The world has seen my gift. Now I want you to see my grief." That one line said more than any sermon ever could. He wanted someone to witness the raw, unpolished parts of his life, the mistakes, the regrets, the nights of loneliness. You won't believe how liberating it was for him to finally speak this aloud. For the first time, he didn't have to wear the armor of a preacher. He was simply a man, exposing the fragility and scars that had shaped him. He wanted her to know that marrying him meant marrying not just a husband, but a man who had been tested by life, faith, and expectation. And then came the truth that shook everything even further. Bishop Jones told her, "Marriage for me isn't about excitement or fantasy. It's about endurance, about being able to stand together when life is unkind, when the world criticizes, when we feel small." That sentence carried decades of experience and reflection. Let me tell you, most people only see the wedding, the joy, the ceremony. But for him, marriage was a continuation of survival. Surviving the weight of ministry, surviving the expectations, surviving himself. The craziest part, he admitted that until he met Loretta, he didn't believe anyone could truly stand beside him through all of that. This is how he explained the depth of commitment he now understood. He said, "Love isn't just feeling, it's choosing someone every day, even when it's hard, even when you're tired, even when life has worn you down." Destiny took an unexpected turn when he realized that he didn't want a wife who simply shared in his triumphs. He wanted someone who could handle his silences, his struggles, and the man he was still becoming. He confessed that the peace he felt with Loretta was unlike anything he had ever known. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. But here is the shocking part. He told her that being truly known by someone required risking everything he had built. He said, "The man you see in public is a shadow of who I am inside. To love me, you have to see all of it, the good, the broken, and the unseen." What makes this story different is that so many people admired him, yet few had seen him fully. And yet, here he was, surrendering that truth to the one person who mattered most. He wasn't performing, he wasn't teaching, he was simply revealing the truth about love, faith, and vulnerability. As he spoke these words, Loretta held his hand and listened. And in that silence, Bishop Jones felt a kind of freedom he had never experienced. He had been waiting not just for love, but for understanding, for a partner who could see beyond the image and embrace the man underneath. In that realization, that confession set the stage for the fourth truth, one that would finally reveal how deeply his heart and his faith had been tested over the years. By the time Bishop Noel Jones reached the fourth and final truth, the weight of the room was almost tangible. He looked at Loretta with eyes that had seen decades of triumph, failure, and solitude, and he said, "The last thing I want you to know is that love doesn't come when it's convenient. It comes when you are ready, truly ready." That was the heart of everything he had learned in a lifetime of waiting. You won't believe how much courage it took for him to say this. For years, he had preached about timing, destiny, and faith, but now he was confessing it from experience, not scripture. He revealed that waiting wasn't punishment. It was preparation, refinement, and a kind of divine protection that only those who truly wait can understand. He told her that marriage wasn't a reward for patience, it was a responsibility for maturity. He said, "I married you when I could protect your heart, not when I was still learning to protect my own." That sentence carried the weight of decades of self-discovery, mistakes, and lessons learned in silence. He explained that love after waiting was not about passion or excitement alone. It was about presence, understanding, and endurance. Let me tell you, this is how he finally understood the meaning of true partnership. Two people standing together, not just in joy, but in trials, in silence, and in the ordinary moments where real life lives. But here's the shocking part. He revealed that all the fame, recognition, and applause he had ever received could not prepare him for this moment of honest love. He said, "All my years of preaching could not teach me how to be a husband." That only comes from experience, humility, and someone willing to see all of you and still stay. What makes this story different is that he didn't just marry a woman. He married understanding, patience, loyalty, and a mirror that reflected his true self. He confessed that until Loretta, he had never met someone who could witness both his gifts and his grief and still choose to walk beside him. This is where it gets interesting. Bishop Jones spoke about legacy, about how every choice he had made in life had led to this moment. He said, "I used to think success would bring fulfillment, but fulfillment comes from love, trust, and being known completely by someone who matters." He admitted that the journey had been lonely, filled with scrutiny, and sometimes misunderstood by those around him. Destiny took an unexpected turn when he realized that the years of waiting, the loneliness, and the struggle were not wasted. They were all preparing him to love, not as a teacher, not as a public figure, but as a man, whole, honest, and ready. And then came the craziest part. He revealed that the act of marriage itself was an extension of his ministry, but in a profoundly personal way. He told Loretta, "Our marriage is my greatest sermon. Not one preached from a pulpit, but one lived every day with truth, patience, and devotion." He shared that the lessons he had learned about timing, honesty, vulnerability, and endurance were not just for them, but for everyone who had ever loved too late, waited too long, or questioned if their moment would ever come. He said, "If someone can learn from my story, then all the waiting, all the struggle, all the pain was worth it." Finally, he looked at Loretta and whispered, "I didn't marry you for the world to see. I married you because I could finally see everything inside myself and still choose love." That was the revelation he had waited a lifetime to share. The applause, the fame, and the admiration meant nothing compared to this quiet, sacred moment of truth. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't perfection. It was real, raw, and transformative, a testament to patience, growth, and the enduring power of love. And with that, Bishop Noel Jones took her hand, looked at the future, and for the first time, He knew that everything he had waited for, every lonely night, every challenge, every moment of doubt, had been leading to this one perfect truth. Love, when it comes at the right time, is unstoppable, redemptive, and eternal.